The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you.
Jesus said to the crowd, "No one who lights a lamp conceals it with a vessel or sets it under a bed. Rather, he places it on a lampstand so that those who enter may see the light. For there is nothing hidden that will not become visible, nothing secret that will not be known and come to light. Take care then how you hear. To anyone who has, more will be given, and from the one who has not, even what he seems to have will be taken away." The Gospel of the Lord. Nearly everybody in here has a memory, maybe many memories, of 1968. That seemed to have been a watershed year in many ways. For one thing, it was the year I was ordained to the priesthood. But in addition to that, we know it was the year that Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King were assassinated. Thomas Merton died. It was the year that the anti-war movement against the Vietnam War kind of solidified itself. And of course, the year of student protests and all of that. It was also the year, actually on this date, 51 years ago, that Padre Pio died. He is one of the saints then that I had knowledge of him, never met him of course, but had knowledge of him when he was alive and his reputation. I remember his reputation for being a stigmatic, for being a wonder worker, for being somebody who could work miracles and healings, and that he bilocated, and sometimes I often wished that I could bilocate like he did. And then I discovered later, he was a very controversial person. He received a lot of opposition to what his reputation was for during his lifetime and even after his death. He was opposed by a couple of popes and rehabilitated by a couple of popes, including Pope St. John Paul II, who both beatified him and canonized him. Two things stand out to me in Padre Pio's life, and they have nothing to do with miracles or the stigmata. They have everything to do with what we heard Jesus say in the gospel. He places the light on a lampstand. In many ways, I think Padre Pio was that very ordinary lampstand on which God himself placed the light. The distinctive thing, I think, about Padre Pio was that he was ordinary, unpretentious, and somewhat embarrassed, I think, by all of the hullabaloo that surrounded him. He didn't seek it. God never gives the wounds of Christ to those who seek them. Rather, the gift of God is what transforms us and makes us powerful. Padre Pio seemed to have the kind of personality that was very, very ordinary and was always willing to step back and allow God to work and try to be a faithful servant. And in my estimation, probably the greatest miracle that he worked was that the one area that he really stepped forward, seeking and succeeding to accomplish something, was in building, with very humble beginnings, a hospital in the city of his monastery, San Giovanni Rotunda, in Italy. A kind of hick town out in the country, in a mountainside village. But that hospital has become one of the greatest centers in Europe, possibly in the world, for research and healing. It's got about 1,100 beds, about 1,500 employees on the staff, and serves over 9,000 patients per year. Now, it's a huge hospital, rivaling Cedars-Sinai or UCLA or any of the other big medical centers that we have around here. But it had the very humble beginnings of Padre Pio's desire, in part because he suffered a lot, his desire to alleviate suffering. And at his initiative, this hospital began in the 1940s and 1950s and has grown into one of the most prestigious centers of healing, centers of natural physical healing in our world. That's not all that well known among many people when they talk about or think about Padre Pio. But I think that is perhaps the most enduring sign of the legacy he left by allowing God to work through him. And so for us, what's the secret that he teaches us? Not outstanding holiness as something that we can achieve, but rather simply openness. Wherever we are, whoever we are, whatever our situation is, openness to let God work through us. One of the things that always stands in the way of letting God work through us is that we've got our own desires. We've got our own plans. And they may or may not be what God wants. But when we're praying to tell God what we think he should do, that pretty well blocks him from doing what he wants. The secret of Padre Pio, I think, was simply that humble openness to being where you are, as they say, bloom where you are planted, and let God work through you.